Welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church.
How does your faith kind of play into it, or does it play into it?
What can be done about it? When I say the church, I'm talking about evangelical white Christians and the black folk who attend their churches.
Hello, welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. I'm Fred Jeff Smith, pastor of Shiloh, and I'm very happy that you're either viewing this on Facebook, YouTube, or Vimeo, or listening to us on iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Prime. As always, we invite your input. You can reach out to me at fredjeffsmith@gmail.com, fredjeffsmith@gmail.com, and let us know how we're doing and what we can do to make the Thrive podcast more appealing to you. I'm very happy to welcome a young man who grew up in this church, is still a member of Shiloh while he's living in Baton Rouge, and he is preparing himself for the next stage of his life. Mr. Donovan Bailey. Donovan, thank you for taking the time to come and share with us today.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell me about you first. We're going to talk about C.H.I.L.L in a minute.
Okay.
Tell me about Donovan. Tell me how Donovan made up his mind to pursue the career path that you are pursuing, and how you think it's going right now.
I got you. Okay. So I'm originally born and raised in Prairieville, Louisiana, graduated from Dutchtown High School, but I saw, some bigger things for myself. I didn't decide to stay in Louisiana after graduating high school. I went to Atlanta to attend Morehouse College, graduated in 2022, before I took a gap year. Now, during that time, I, had to collect myself, get myself together, travel the world, but I also decided that I wanted to go to law school. Like, how did you arrive here? So I got my degree in political science with a minor in psychology, and as I got to my senior year of college, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a degree in political science, but what am I going to do with that? Political science is not really what I'm passionate about. And if anything, it taught me that I'm more interested in the micro, the one-on-one interactions, than I am in the macro, the interactions between countries and nations, on a more global scale. So I decided, okay, if I'm interested in the micro, if I'm interested in helping people, how can I use these skills and talents that God has given me to help people that look like us? And I, came upon the fact that Black people oftentimes get taken advantage of when it comes to the law. We're underrepresented, we're under-advocated for, and we needed more people to be in this space. So that's ultimately what led me to law school. Now, during that time, I, studied for the LSAT, got a good score my first time. I was dead set on going to Howard Law School, actually. Got in, got a scholarship, all of that good stuff. But when I compared the cost of living, didn't really seem like where I needed to be. Okay. So here I am at Southern University Law Center. So my path to Southern University Law Center, we actually met our former Chancellor Pierre, in the mall one day, and I just considered it, a completely random interaction. I didn't really think anything of it. He said, hey, if you're considering going to Southern, here's my card, this, that, and the third. Sure. But actually, I later on ended up contacting him, having a really good conversation with him, met him at the school, got a little tour of the campus and all of that good stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I could see myself succeeding here. So that's what ultimately led me to starting at SULC in 2023. I am the former 1L class president. I am the current 2L class president. I'm a part of the moot court team, and I have now started this great organization that I came to talk to you about today.
We're going to get to C.H.I.L.L in just a minute. Let's talk a little bit more about law school and your interest in a particular field of law. I know a little bit about law. My sister says I know nothing. Right. But you have to choose a certain career path, and you chose an interesting career path to follow with the law. Talk a little bit about that.
So what I enjoy about law and about a law degree in general is that it's very versatile. This seems like an industry where if I have a law degree, I can essentially use it, how I want to. I'm not boxed into doing litigation. I could do transactional work. I could do contracts, what have you. And being in law school and being exposed to all of these different parts and facets of the law has honestly taught me more of what I don't want to do than what I do. The classes that I've taken, like criminal law and family law, is like they've been interesting when I've been in them, but I also recognize that that's not what I want to do every single day. So this past January and last January as well, I participated in the T.H.R.I.V.E patent law program. And I think I got really good exposure to the patent process. And I'm also interested in IP because during my gap year, I did content creation on Twitch and YouTube and stuff like that. So it really gave me a passion for helping, people grow on these online platforms and in these industries, because everybody is going to think that what they came up with is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Everybody wants to be the next big person that's getting the Nike deal and the McDonald's deal or whatever. But if I can be the person to help you lock in your brand, your idea, your logo, your platform, whatever, I would love to be that person.
Sure. I'm not a lawyer, but help me to understand the distinction between a copyright and a patent.
So think about a copyright on something like a name, like on the T.H.R.I.V.E podcast, for example. But a patent, you would put that on like an item, like the microphone that we're talking into right now, or a particular thing that you have, rather than copywriting the name so that someone else can't use that name. You have patented the item and all of the components and ingredients that make it what it is. That is what you have patented.
So if I copyright Fred Jeff Smith for whatever reason, like somebody's going to try to take my name,
right?
That precludes anyone from utilizing my name without my permission, because I have legal right, I have legal standing because of the copyright. And
at the very least, it'll prevent them from getting paid off using your name. That's not going to stop anybody else from naming their child Fred Jeff Smith in the future. But if somebody wanted to make that name a brand, if somebody wanted to use that and let's say put it on a T-shirt or a hat or something, then they would have to check that with you if you have the copyright on that name.
And black people, correct me if I didn't hear you correctly, black people are somehow being taken advantage of with regard to patents and copyrights and things of that sort?
Absolutely.
Delve into that a little bit. Help me to see how we're being taken advantage of.
Because if you look all throughout history, black people have been on the cutting edge of technology, music, all of these different industries, but very rarely do we have the resources or even the information to know how to patent, copyright, trademark, whatever it is. So I say that we're getting taken advantage of because we're coming up with these multi-million-dollar ideas, but if we don't have the resources, all it takes is someone else to either see that idea or have that idea themselves, and now it's their billion-dollar business. But if we had people who could properly advocate for individuals that look like us, who have these ideas and say, okay, that sounds like something great, right? That sounds like something useful, something that we could really, go a long way with. But let's take a step further and get you a patent on that. Let's help you trademark that idea. I think that will work wonders for building generational wealth in the black community.
And how much does it cost to procure a patent or a copyright?
Well, that often depends on the item itself and how much you intend to sell it for, how much you
So it's not a one-size-fits-all type thing?
No, there's no, going rate on a patent. It really depends on the item that you're intending to patent and what you intend to use it for. Because like I said, I did the program with AbbVie, which is a pharmaceutical company, so they were teaching us about the differences in how you would patent different types of medicine, because that never really made sense to me. Think about when you have a headache. You could go and take Advil, Aleve, Tylenol. You have so many different pills that ultimately do the same thing, right? Why do they all need to exist? Well, that is what the patent process is for. Because when you are filing a patent application, you're saying that our specific item uses this ingredient, this ingredient, this ingredient at this ratio. We put this label on it. All of these things that make my item unique. So when you, patent it that way, when you market it that way, you don't know how many people are going to buy that, obviously, but in a field like medicine, it's meant to go to more people, so that patent may be a little bit more expensive than on something like a lawnmower or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Right.
It does. I'm just trying to understand how blacks are being taken advantage of. And what I'm hearing you say is that if someone steps in and patents or copyrights something, and I'm the one who introduced copyright, you said patent.
Right.
But if someone else steps in, then people can steal your ideas.
Right.
And profit from them, monetize it, and make money from it.
Right.
And that happens a lot.
Yes, I was going to provide a very common example. You know, TikTok is super, super big now. You know, so much so that it recently got banned and it came back. But a reason why I wasn't on TikTok at first is because of how often black people got taken advantage of on there. You know, these TikTok dances and challenges that people come up with is black people that are, you know, doing them, starting them. But all it takes is, you know, some white girl in high school or something like that to go back and do the same dance, but she's the one that's on TV for it. She's the one that's getting credited as the, you know, creator, innovator of it. Now it's her dance. But if, you know, the person who did it originally had, I guess, put some type of copyright or trademark on, I don't know how you do it on a movement necessarily, but you know, that same idea, because it's us that are creating it, doing it for the first time, but other people are who are getting the notoriety and, more importantly, the money from doing that. Those are the people that are going on the morning show talking about how you came up with it and getting all of this public recognition. That's what I mean by being taken advantage of. Every time that we are, you know, losing money, losing opportunities, I think that's a place where we could be advocated for better, and I think a lawyer would be great to do that.
You also said that you're not particularly drawn to political science.
Correct.
Are you drawn to politics at all?
Well, politics are a part of everyday life, unfortunately. We see politics in everything that we do in all of our interactions. So I would say I'm a fan of politics in order to know how to navigate the world that we live in. But I wouldn't see a career in that, because if I were to, you know, try to pursue a career in political science, that would require that I go back and get a master's in political science or a PhD or something. Now I'm writing poli-sci textbooks.
Or you
Never
can just
saw
hang a
that for
shingle and
myself.
say, pay me $25,000 and I'll help you get elected to office.
Oh, okay.
That's what a whole lot of people are doing.
Yeah.
And they don't have a degree in it either.
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't necessarily see that avenue for myself, but that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
So you really came in to talk about this organization that you have formed, C.H.I.L.L, which is an acronym. Tell me about C.H.I.L.L and tell me about its origin and how it's progressing to where it is now.
I got you. I'd be happy to. So C.H.I.L.L stands for Counseling Humans in Life Lessons. We are a peer counseling and mental health organization that acts as the bridge between students at Southern University Law Center and their mental health resources both on and off campus.
Okay.
Now, in the beginning, C.H.I.L.L started around 2012 at Morehouse College. It was actually started by one of my prophytes in my fraternity. And it was started to address the need for mental health resources at Morehouse. Because for a lot of people, you know, it was their first time being away from home. You know, college can be very challenging for people. So they needed, you know, more mental health resources and ultimately to destigmatize mental health. Because as you know, in the black community, people often associate, you know, changes in your mental health. Oh, they're crazy, they're weak, whatever. And it's like, you know, we need more people that look like us that are advocating for the importance of mental health. So my freshman year at Morehouse in 2018, I joined C.H.I.L.L, and I had, you know, some very impactful experiences with that my freshman year. You know, a lot of people that I knew had suicidal thoughts and ideations, and I was able to talk through those things with them, and ultimately they're still here today, and I'm very thankful for that. But it showed me, honestly, the power that an individual can have in making somebody else's life better. A lot of times, you know, people look around and they're looking for something or someone to blame. They're looking for something or someone to come in and save them. But we have the power to change our mental health on a daily basis. And I learned that at Morehouse. And I saw even more of a need for it in law school. In law school, there are so many challenges coming from all directions. It's a very, very rigorous process, but it's also very competitive, very isolating. People find it difficult to trust one another because they think everybody is competing for grades. Oh, this person is trying to snake me. They want to get this job. They want to take this opportunity from me. And that causes people to feel isolated. But when we have all of this stress, all of this pressure, all of these mental challenges, and then you feel like you're going through it by yourself, that's what leads a lot of law students and, young lawyers and even people who have been in the practice for a long time to deal with substance abuse problems. They try to find solutions on their own because they don't recognize a community that cares about their mental health, which is why I started this organization at the Law Center. I recognized a need for it. I recognized that it was not there previously, so I thought, why not start it myself?
Is it totally grassroots? Is it supported by the law center, by the university system itself? Where does your funding come from? If there's a need for funding, I don't even know if there's a need for funding.
Well, there is definitely a need for funding because none of this stuff happens for free as far as putting these events and things together. We do have support from the school in that, if we are having an activity on campus or something, we could put the flyers up all around. We have TVs throughout the law center where we can advertise our events and things of that nature. But, in large part, this is a student-led, student-fed organization. We are peer counselors, meaning that these are the same people that are sitting in this class with you that you can talk to about, the struggles and challenges that you're facing in that area. So while we do have support from the Law Center, a lot of the work that is being done is done by students for students.
You meet weekly, monthly,
so we have
2 weeks? How does that work?
We have a general body meeting once a month. It's on the second Tuesday of every month at 12 o'clock, and it's on campus and via Zoom.
Is it limited to law students, or can it expand to the larger campus? Because
we're hoping
for those who don't know, the Southern University Law Center sits in the middle of the Southern University campus.
Right. Exactly. We're hoping to expand to SUBR, LSU, any school in the world could have a C.H.I.L.L chapter, ideally. But as of right now, given that this is something that I started last semester within the Law Center, right now we are limited to, the students of the Law Center.
So you said that this started at Morehouse when you were a student there.
Correct.
How is that program going, that particular program? Are there chapters to C.H.I.L.L?
So when I started at Morehouse, initially there were chapters at Morehouse, Spelman, and Clark. For those of you that don't know, they're all, very close across one street from one another. So there were individual chapters at those schools.
Okay.
But recently there was an incident at Morehouse that involved an organization that extended across multiple campuses, and in response to that incident, they decided, okay, we're not going to have any more organizations that extend across multiple campuses. So now everybody's kind of separated. I don't even think that the C.H.I.L.L chapter at Morehouse is still going, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, you're a lawyer.
Working on it.
Is C.H.I.L.L, you're going to be there. Working within these chapters, how do you protect yourself from litigation?
So,
negative litigation.
Right. So,
so-and-so slit his wrist. So-and-so ran his car into a tree trying to kill himself, and he was a member of C.H.I.L.L. One of the things about Baton Rouge is that this is a very litigious community and a very litigious state. And I would imagine that an organization like yours would have to protect itself from possible litigation when you're simply trying to help people go through tough times. Right. And that's the crux of my question.
Right. So when advertising C.H.I.L.L, we do not advertise C.H.I.L.L as some form of, therapy service. We're not guaranteeing any results of any kind. This is a peer support group. So when we recognize that one of our peers is, in danger, or they may be thinking or doing something that could harm themselves or other people, we are, mandated to report that to the school and to the counseling center and things like that to make sure that they get the help that they need. But ultimately, C.H.I.L.L, I don't think at this time is really in a position, to be litigated against for any reason. Like none of our members, none of our members are talking about doing anything like that. But also, I just think that, again, this is a school club. This is not a nonprofit or something like that. So I don't think that anybody would try to come after us. I'm going to pray about that now that you've brought that out. But yeah, I don't think anybody's going to pursue us for that.
Beyond the peer-to-peer help, do you guys sponsor workshops, seminars, things of that sort, where you bring in experts to talk about coping mechanisms and things of that sort?
Yes, actually. So this was last month during the Chancellor Search interviews. I actually hosted an event called How to Cope with Law School, where I gave not one, not two, but 15 different healthy coping mechanisms, some of which I've used, to great success, others that I've, heard recommended by experts or my peers, people that have used them, to help maintain themselves. So we do share healthy coping mechanisms. Last semester, October 10th is World Mental Health Day. So on that day, we hosted a mental health panel where we had some psychologists and therapists come in and talk about how to overcome some of the challenges and rigors of law school, because there are challenges that are pretty unique to law students. Having to read and write all of that information every single day is very taxing. But there are also a lot of feelings that law students have that are very common for people in general, like imposter syndrome. Have you heard of that before?
No, help me.
Okay.
Explain it.
So imposter syndrome is something that a lot of people experience when you feel like you are not meant to be where you are, when you feel like you don't belong, where you feel like you're not good enough. It's often associated with self-doubt. Everybody that's in law school right now at the very least had to pass the LSAT. They had to apply and pay their money to be here, and they still feel like, oh, I'm not good enough to be in law school. I'm not cut out to be here, Have you ever felt that way before? Have you ever felt like you weren't qualified to be in?
No.
Oh, okay.
I've known what I was going to do since I was about 6 years old, and I've just stayed on that path. So, no, that's not a problem for me.
Right.
But I can see where it might be a problem for others. I hope you're watching. My sister started off wanting to be the Black Barbara Walters. She started off in broadcast journalism.
Okay.
She turned towards an interest in the law when she took a journalism law course while she was an undergrad at LSU. It piqued her curiosity. My mother at the time was working as the director of admissions at Southern University's law school, and she told my mother that she had an interest in the law, and she took the LSAT, the Law School Aptitude Test, and she scored in the 90th or 95th percentile. I'm sure she'll correct me if I get it wrong.
Right.
And that's how she ended up in law school. It was not the path that she was originally on.
Right.
And just as that worked out for her in her favor, moving her toward the law, I can imagine that people will find themselves in law school and then wake up one morning and say, why am I here? What am I doing here? This is not really where I want to be. But there is pressure to stay there because people feel like pursuing a career in law is a wonderful thing to do, and they don't want to disappoint or upset anyone. Am I on the right track with what you're talking about when you're talking about
definitely, absolutely. And a lot of law students, at least people in my class or that are there while I'm here, a lot of us are first gen, law students or first gen college graduates. A lot of them feel like their entire family's success and future is riding on them and their ability to maintain themselves in such a rigorous and challenging environment. And that's very, very mentally taxing on people, which is, again, why I started this organization. I want people to have peer support. I want people to recognize that they're not alone and that these challenges that they're facing, especially in law school, they are not the first nor the last to face those challenges. They're not the first person to feel like they're not good enough or like they don't belong. A lot of people that are coming into law school, they are coming, out of college at the top of their class, and they're used to being the number one and everything, and law school will humble you very quickly. In your very first semester, you can go in thinking that you know everything, and you will be sat down by January. Absolutely. So,
the stereotype is that this kind of mental pressure, I don't want to use the word illness, mental pressure will reveal itself through substance abuse, alcohol, drugs. But there's also a substance that we abuse on a regular basis. Now, you want to talk about being guilty of something. This is one that I'm guilty of, and that's food. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I've never used illegal drugs, but I have struggled with eating disorders, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that food intake is one of the things that you can control, and it's a benign vice. Go ahead, baby, have another cookie.
Right.
I ain't gonna tell nobody. You want a second scoop of ice cream? There are enablers for food abuse. Do you find that within the law center and the members of your group that they might stay away from drugs, stay away from alcohol, but they might abuse more benign things like food? And food is just one example. I'm sure that there are others.
Oh, yes. I think some of those benign sources are often more used, things like food. And I think why people do it is because of a sense of comfort. In law school and in life, there are so many things that we cannot control, so many things that happen that we don't expect. But like you say, your food intake, that's something that you have complete control over. So if if this cookie is all that's, bringing you joy in life, okay, well, why not have to?
Right.
That a lot of people seek comfort in those types of things. I think another thing that people often abuse is social media. People there's a new term for it called doom scrolling, where you just sit on your phone and scroll all day. I think a lot of people, especially around my age, tend to abuse that resource because, again, it gives them some form of comfort. I think for a lot of people, when they can lock in and look at their phone and just swipe on TikTok for hours, the world around them just goes away. It no longer exists. So they find a sense of comfort or escapism, in that resource, in their phone, in their plate, what have you. But all of this, that I think that's what I want people to understand and take away from this conversation that we're having about this. All of that stems back to mental health. All of that stems back to potential mental pressure, mental challenges, whatever you want to call it, because you can look at it like, I'm not good enough to be in law school or what have you if you're having imposter syndrome. But that can also look like I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy of eating healthy or of taking care of myself, because all of these things have overlap. Your mental health and your physical health are very, very closely tied together. So when you are experiencing this mental pressure and that's driving you to want to eat a lot of food that isn't good for you or want to scroll on social media or what have you, that's all ultimately going to tie back to your mental health. It's going to tie back to those feelings of, comparison. Comparison is the thief of joy, absolutely. But when you're scrolling on social media all day, looking at all your friends or associates or whatever, and they're taking these vacations and they're doing all of these things with their lives, and you're like, I'm just sitting here in my bed on my phone. And now that's leading towards feelings of depression. That's leading towards that imposter syndrome that I spoke about earlier. That's leading towards potential anxiety, like, if I don't pass this test, I'm never going to be able to take this, cruise to Mexico that I see my friends on right now. I'm never going to be able to have this lifestyle that I see all of these other people have. And then you start feeling bad about yourself. And it's ultimately very cyclical.
Generally, what we've been talking about thus far has to do with feelings of lack of self-esteem and things of that sort. I can imagine that this also reveals itself in anger issues. Do you deal with anger management problems that might exist within these law school students?
Personally, no.
Within the group.
Within C.H.I.L.L. Yes,
Yeah.
we do seek to address some of those challenges that students have, because you would think, hey, we're in professional school, everybody's going to have, a certain degree of composure, but I've seen on multiple occasions students lose their composure in class, not just in general, but like having actual, outbursts or going.
Well, not everybody responds, "Woe is me! I'm poor. I'm needy."
Right.
Some people respond by putting their finger in somebody's face, and threatening people, and things like that. And I see that here at the church from time to time, where people fall back to a response where they feel like their back is against the wall, and I have to come out swinging. And I'm just wondering if that's been your experience through this group as well.
Yes, we've definitely encountered students that fit that archetype. A lot of them recognize the challenges and the pressure of law school, and they think I have to come back with some form of aggression. I have to dominate, to really, excel in this field. I have to be rude or mean to people, make other people feel less than to make myself feel better. And what we do at C.H.I.L.L. is to try to provide them other, alternative healthy coping mechanisms, alternative feelings that you can have regarding, different situations, like if you didn't get the grade that you wanted to, for example. Rather than going and talk to somebody else about their grade and trying to make them, feel less than, instead, why don't you go talk to your professor? Why don't you understand how you got the grade that you got and, work on improving yourself and your academics, and then you won't be worried about what anybody else got on their test. So we try to provide people alternatives in that method and in that regard.
Does C.H.I.L.L. provide referral services?
Yes.
I imagine that there are situations that arise that are beyond the scope of just peer-to-peer counseling, and people have a need for more professional services, and you guys can point them in the right direction where they can receive that kind of help?
Yes, absolutely. Every student that's at Southern University Law Center and at SUBR, we all have free access to the counseling center that's on campus. I use those services myself, and I have a very good relationship with the therapist over there, such that we've created kind of like a pipeline program. If you are a member of C.H.I.L.L. or seeking services from C.H.I.L.L. and don't find that, these alternatives and things that we're offering you are meeting the need that you have, then we will take you directly to the counseling center and get you signed up, to make sure that you have all of the resources that you need. But oftentimes, at Southern, the biggest challenge that we have to overcome is sharing the information. It's about accessibility, because all of these things are here and have been here. All of it is free to you as a law student, but if you don't know how to get to the counseling center, then it serves no use to you. So that's largely what we're doing. If we find that a particular challenge, that a particular issue is outside of our scope, outside of our jurisdiction, we will be more than happy to take you to the counseling center and have somebody, talk to you about that and see, how we can better address that need. So we have no problem, working with somebody and getting them, the help they need, even if it's not directly from us.
You grew up in Prairieville,
Yes,
Ascension Parish, and you attend law school at Southern, which is in Scotlandville, in the northern end of East Baton Rouge Parish. As a young man, how old are you, 24, 25?
I'm 24.
24 years old. What's your assessment of the greater Baton Rouge area with regard to the differences between North and South? Because the northern end of the parish is one way, the southern end of the parish, and where you are, Ascension, is another way. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm just asking your thoughts about the greater Baton Rouge area.
I would say within the greater Baton Rouge area, there is a pretty big cultural divide. I would say that people that are from Baton Rouge, that grew up in this area, that graduated, from the local high schools and whatnot, kind of view this city a certain way that people who are not from this area do not. Like a lot of people who were born and raised in Baton Rouge take a great deal of pride in Baton Rouge itself, but people that are from, Prairieville, for example, don't see Baton Rouge as such a shining star. They would rather kind of stick to themselves and be in their area. So my overall assessment is that there is a great need for more community-led organizations, more community-driven things, so that people can see the value in other people, even if you don't necessarily have the same viewpoint as them. The more organizations that we have that can bring people together and foster community, I think that will ultimately help address that cultural divide that I spoke about.
Let me challenge you with something.
Okay.
You're roughly the same age as my children, and you know my sons. You know my nieces. You grew up here with them. I tend to look at things in this community and nationally from a race prism. Everything is racial. Some people think that that's too narrow a point of view, but my experience is when you get back to the root of everything in this country, it's rooted in race. Inequities that exist economically, politically, educationally, socially, all have their roots in race. I find that people of your generation don't necessarily see it the way that I see it. So I'm going to ask you to educate me in a couple of minutes. Just educate me on why I might need to expand my view of things beyond just the prism of race.
Okay. So to simplify it, the best answer that I would have for you is because times are changing. To expand on that, I think that in 2025 especially, and in recent years, there has been an extreme and enhanced focus on diversity. As you know, there have been some recent rollbacks regarding DEI programs and things of that nature, but diversity is still very much a big thing. It expands into, the workplace, it expands into educational environments, and you are going to see diverse people, diverse viewpoints everywhere. So if you're looking at everything from the prism of this is about race, I think ultimately you may be losing some of the value from other people's perspectives, other people's viewpoints. Does that make sense?
I want you to elaborate.
I got you. So,
right now, I'm just waiting for the next statement to come.
You say you're not sold. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I don't expect you to sell me. You're not going to sell me. Okay. But I am interested. One of the reasons why we started the podcast was for me to have conversations with people that I wouldn't necessarily have on a regular basis. I want to be exposed to different points of view, and I want to be able to probe your thinking, you individually and other people's thinking pejoratively, to help me understand what things I might be missing. Ultimately, it's to help me and those who are listening to me grow. And so I'm just trying to get you're very bright, very intelligent young man. You have a brilliant future ahead of you, and I get the sense that you have a decidedly different view of things than I do. And part of it is generational. You just alluded to that. But with what has happened in the last couple of years, the last several years, with the Trump election and the Landry election, and even the Sid Edwards election, and this decided turn towards conservatism in our politics, and because it's in our politics, it's also in our academics, and it's in our business, and everything else. What is it that I am perhaps short-sighted on with regard to race relations and how politics is being played out here in the last couple of years, couple of elections?
Okay. That's I guess a more directed question. So I can tie that into Chill as well. So with politics and all of the cultural divide that I spoke about earlier, there are so many reasons, so many things that people point out about what makes us different, right? There are divides, there are lines that people draw in the sand. They say, if you cross this line, we can't be cool anymore. And that could be for any number of reasons. The type of job that you have, who you choose to love, what religion you choose to follow, what have you. But I think oftentimes what people are missing, people seek to be understood, but in order to be understood, you must first understand. You have to understand the needs, the viewpoints, and the values of others if you ever want your viewpoint to be understood. So the way that I tie that into mental health, and the beautiful thing about it, what I love about mental health, is that no matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, it is the one thing that we all have. It is the one thing that we can all unify behind, no matter what, who you want to be the president, what church you go to, whatever. We all have mental health. So using a vehicle like that, something, where you can talk about challenges that you face, things that you've overcome, there's commonality in that. There's community in that. There's ultimately diversity in that we all have different viewpoints, we all have different perspectives, but we can still come together. We can still agree that we all have mental health, for example, right? We can get together behind that. So I think that's what people who have a particular mindset looking specifically at race or looking specifically at where you come from or what have you, a lot of them are losing sight of the potential, value to be gained from a community-related, perspective, from the perspective that no matter all of these things that they're trying to say to paint us out as being different, we do have things in common. We do have things where I can understand why you feel that way. So ultimately, you understand me as well. So I think that's what a lot of people are missing. They're missing the importance of finding commonalities with one another.
So at the hypothetical Thanksgiving dinner, when multiple generations are sitting around the table and a topic comes up and someone of my generation, I'm 63, says, well, them white folk ain't gonna ever give us a real chance. With what does a person of your generation think when you hear someone like me say that? And I'm likely to say that. Okay. So what is it? And you might not verbalize it, but there's something going on in your head when you hear that. What is it that you're dealing with when you hear that from people of my generation?
So when I hear phrases like that internally, part of me is like, that may be right. That could be true. We ain't never gonna get no chance. We've been fighting for generations and this, that, and the third. And part of me wants to buy into that. But the other part that's more so, in my generation is like, why does it have to remain that way? Just because it's been that, I think that people have such a limited mindset, such a limited perspective to what they have experienced with, what they grew up with, what have you, and that's okay. I feel like it would be difficult for you to know much more outside of what you've been exposed to. So I'm not faulting your perspective at all.
That's a very nice way of saying I'm limited and I'm ignorant. But that's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, no,
You said it very diplomatically.
Thank you.
But go right on.
I believe that people in my generation, even in the generations to come after me, we are very largely responsible for changing the narrative around things like that. You know, even though I grew up in, majority white schools and things like that, I've graduated from one HBCU and I'm at another one right now. But even at my HBCU, there are, white, Asian, Latino, whatever students there at the law center. So I couldn't, in my mind, think, oh, well, I can't serve this person because white people have never given us a chance and all this type of stuff. I can't think in that limited fashion. I recognize the importance of diversity for the world that I live in. So I can't just look at it that way. So I'll say, when those types of comments are made internally, again, part of me is going to agree, but the other part is going to provide some pushback, like why can't we change that? And more often than not, that's the one that I'm going to vocalize. That's the conversation that I'm going to have about how we can make things look different. What can we do to change the narrative, to change the situation, rather than just sitting around and complaining about it. I said the same thing at the law school. A lot of students were struggling with their mental health. And again, that's black, white, or otherwise. A lot of students were struggling with their mental health. But rather than sitting around and complaining about it, oh, we don't have this resource, we don't have this, we don't have that, me and my generation are responsible for, okay, let's create this, let's do this, let's make this look different. And I think that's the perspective that I would provide to that conversation.
Recently, it was revealed, a little bit over a year ago, I say recently, it was revealed that the state of Louisiana has shorted Southern University $1.1 billion. $1.1 billion with a B dollars.
Yes.
And that money was redirected to other institutions, primarily white institutions. When I bring that up to you as a black young man burgeoning on a law profession, a graduate of one HBCU, about to graduate from another, what does that say to you that Southern University was shorted $1.1 billion? The money came from the federal government, got to the state, and somehow or other the state took it and did something else with it. This information came to the public after a letter was written to the previous governor, John Bell Edwards, before he left office. Our current governor, Jeff Landry, starting on his second term in office, his second year on his first term in office, has not, to my knowledge, addressed this issue in any way, shape, or form, even to make a statement regarding it. What does that say to you when I say them white folk ain't gonna ever give us a chance?
That says to me that the legal minds, that the potential, that the perspectives that come from Southern University Law Center and other schools like it are undervalued. That reinforces the exact, statement that you just said, and it's why the first part of me, upon hearing that, would agree with it, because it shows. It is indicated in the quality of the campus and the quality of the buildings. When we go in for class and the markers are not working and stuff like that, that you see that. We're using textbooks from 5 and 10 years ago, and they are getting the 2025 version, as soon as it rolls out. The differences in resources and access is evident very, very clearly to all students that attend Southern University Law Center and other schools like it. Again, I agree with that point because it's clear in my classroom experience. But going back to the other part of me that I was talking about, why can't we change that? Why can't we leverage that to an extent? If we know that these other schools are getting all of these resources, hey, if like last year, I was the 1L class president, right? Let me introduce myself to the 1L class president at LSU Law School. Why don't we work together and partner on an event? He was talking about, oh, well, we do these, bar reviews every month, and we go here and we just put up a $500 tab and all this type of stuff. I said, okay, well, why don't you send me a flyer for that, and I send that to SULC students? Why don't we contribute to this event in some way, or why don't we come and, take advantage of these resources? Because, again, they're there. If we know that our perspectives are undervalued, underappreciated, we can see that. Now let's work to do something about that. Because if we're in these same spaces with LSU Law School or any of these other, institutions that are getting this money, and they're seeing that we're able to, interact with them, compete with them, whatever, that ultimately, I think, would reflect the need for us to receive those resources as well.
Recently, a law professor at LSU was dismissed from teaching opportunities or teaching responsibilities because of statements that he allegedly made while in a law class that were derogatory toward the president and toward the governor. As a law student, what's your thought about this particular professor being dismissed from teaching with regard to free speech?
So I don't agree with that dismissal because being in law school, we are often taught to challenge, more popular viewpoints. We're taught to argue things from both sides and see other people's perspectives, and to ultimately advocate for people's right to free speech. So how could we be in an institution that's teaching us that we have the right to free speech, and then someone in exercising their free speech loses their job? That doesn't make any sense to me. And a lot of my teachers are aware of that because, when they're about to make a statement, especially one that's political in nature, they'll preface it. They're like, look, don't tell anybody. I don't want to get fired, all of this other type of stuff.
Turn all the recorders on.
Yeah, exactly. People are on notice about that, certainly. But I don't think that was justified because, when I come into a law school classroom, I'm an adult just like my professor's an adult. When they ask me a question, I am allowed to, speak freely regarding my thoughts on that question. Now, granted, I'm, respectful. I'm going to maintain myself when talking to a professor, but ultimately I'm going to say what's on my heart. I don't feel the need to sugarcoat it when I'm in class. So I don't see why a professor should have to, have fear or anxiety that if I express myself freely, I could, lose my livelihood.
Do you see it as a form of intimidation?
I do. Okay. I think that it's meant to suppress unpopular viewpoints because, if you think that speaking out against the government or a particular person, would put your job at risk, and then you would be far less likely to make a comment about that. You're going to have to just sit on your hands and be mad. But, yeah, I do think that it's a form of intimidation and, suppression of free speech.
Okay. That's a good answer. I like that one. As we turn toward home,
okay,
one of the things that you and I have talked about, we've talked about it before you came in, but we talked about it in the past. While you're here in Baton Rouge, greater Baton Rouge area, you don't see yourself as staying here. So what is your biggest objection, if that's the right word, biggest concern about planting your flag in Baton Rouge?
So, again, I am from this area.
Yes.
I have a very deep love and respect for Baton Rouge and Louisiana as a whole, and take all of that in consideration when I say this. I view this area as a sand trap. A lot of people that I know that are from here, that grew up here, hanging around the same people, to this very day, they are hanging around the same people, doing the same things. The people in high school that said they were going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, they're now, greeters at the local Walmart. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I have greater aspirations than that. I saw more for myself than being, here for the rest of my life. There are so many people in Louisiana and in the greater Baton Rouge area that have not seen outside of their parish, let alone their state, let alone this country. There are so many people with limited fishbowl viewpoints. This is all that they've ever known. So my biggest objection to staying here is that the longer that I stay here, the more likely it is that I will be here for the rest of my life. And I see more for myself than that. And this will always be home. I can always come back to my home church. I can always come back and see my people, and I will have great love and respect for them for the rest of time. But this is not where I'm meant to be.
One of my concerns about that, and my youngest niece feels largely the way you do, but one of my concerns about that is the brain drain on a place like Baton Rouge. I'm from here, born and raised. And I love Baton Rouge with a passion. But one of the great concerns that I have is that young, bright, intelligent, forward-thinking people such as yourself, the moment you can get away from here, you're gone. And it causes a brain drain within this area. So I always ask that question. With older people, I ask it about their children, but you don't have children, so I'm asking it about you. And I must admit, I'm deeply concerned about what that bodes for Baton Rouge going forward, because I think this community has a lot going for it if we can find a way to work cohesively in order to bring about the positive potential that exists within here.
Right. I see what you're talking about. Definitely. I acknowledge the brain drain, and a lot of, what I feel like is Baton Rouge's best and brightest have definitely departed because they've seen, other opportunities that exist elsewhere. They've seen, more for themselves. I think a common feeling among people that are around my age is that Baton Rouge is not a great place to try to stimulate some form of change. A lot of people that are here are from here, born and raised, they've been in the community their whole lives, and they're afraid of change. They're afraid of diversity. They're afraid of, things progressing over time to an extent such that the people that are the next generation, that are the best and brightest, that are coming up with all of these ideas, they don't feel that, their perspective would be valued here, or that, the things that they would want to contribute, that this would be the best platform or place to launch those things from. For example, I'm very passionate about mental health. I intend to, create or modify mental health legislation in the future. Baton Rouge, Louisiana is not the best place to do that from. If I were in a place like D.C. or something like that, I could work to create legislation that affects Baton Rouge if I do something on a national scale. But Baton Rouge is not the best jumping off point for a career that expands outside of Baton Rouge. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. A lot of people that are from here and have stayed here have built, wonderful lives and legacies for themselves here, and it never expands outside of here. But, people like myself with high aspirations can see themselves places other than here.
If others wanted to get in touch with you about C.H.I.L.L and learn more about it, how could they do that? Just look at that camera and tell them how they could do that.
Okay, so you can follow us on Instagram at SULC.CHILL. You see it right here on my button for those watching along at home. And as a matter of fact, I have one for you as well so that you can
thank you very much,
represent,
sir.
Indeed. But yes, you can definitely get in touch with us.
Thank you.
At SULC.CHILL on Instagram if you want to get involved and see some of the things that we're doing at SULC and in the community. That's the best way to get in touch with us and stay involved.
Donovan Bailey, outstanding young man. I'm very proud of you. I feel like I might have had a small something to do with the kind of young man that you are. And I wish you every success in the future. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for listening. We'll be back again next time.